Good evening, everyone. I don't know if you can hear me. Margaret, can you hear me? Testing my microphone? Yes, you can hear.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, we will call this meeting to order. And welcome to the Benton City Council meeting of April the 10th. And someone has an echo, so
That's
if
Margaret. She needs to mute her.
okay, thank you. So I know that you're muted, Margaret. Can you give us a signal? Let's have everyone do a mic check first.
Test.
Test.
Test. Test.
Test.
And test.
This is Dan. Test.
Can you hear us all, Margaret?
Yes, I can hear everyone.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So I do want to say one thing for some of those who may be online. The council has decided to have a workshop session on the second Monday of the month. And in addition to our first and third Tuesdays, the Monday workshop will be starting at 6:00 p.m. So with that, we will move forward. And I think I will ask Diane this morning to say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, roll call, please.
Councilwoman Wadsworth. Here. Councilman Sindretto.
Here.
Councilman Reed.
Here.
Councilwoman Funk.
Here.
Councilwoman Alcazar.
Here.
Okay. Everyone is here. So now we'll move on to items for discussion, although we do not have here to approve the agenda, but there is an agenda change. So I think I will just go ahead and tell you about that at the moment. We have no need to go into the executive session tonight. Some of the information we had planned is not available as yet. So that will come off the agenda.
I make a motion to approve the agenda as amended, removing item H, executive session.
Second.
All in favor?
Sandra, aye.
Wadsworth, aye. Funk, aye.
Alcazar, aye.
Great eye.
Okay. Thank you. Motion carries. Okay, our first discussion item is the I-82 South Subarea Plan and Design Standards. And there are two parts to that. And I would like to introduce Michael Mahaffey to go over those two items in detail.
So good evening, Mayor and members of the council. And I think Brandon is on the call. Is that right? Brandon, are you here? At any rate, I'd also like to introduce my colleague Lawrence Kamar, who is on the call. Lawrence, you want to put your camera on and just say hi to everybody? There he is.
Hello all.
Hello.
And so you saw in our last meeting the materials that we learned so far, and I'm going to run through them again tonight a little more quickly in terms of the overview, but also having more time for you, the members of the council, to stop us and ask questions and make notes of things that you'd like to see that maybe we haven't sufficiently addressed, or things that maybe you don't think we should address in the way that we have. This is a bit more of a roll up your sleeves presentation. And I know it was requested previously for us to get a video, and I do intend to do that, but I think we're waiting for the video recording from the last meeting, and I'm going to take that and turn it into a standalone video that people can share and go over some of this material, because as we've talked about before, there is a lot here. So I'm going to try to share my screen here. Let's see, Margaret, I need to get permission to share screen or to show my slides. I think it's the green button down at the bottom. There we go. Perfect. All right, so I'm gonna just run through some of the same slides you saw last time, just give you a very quick overview.
Sorry, there's a little bit of echo.
So-
Do you think people who aren't
So
mute their lines to get rid of the echo?
okay, let's try this. Is that working better?
No, we're still hearing echo through there. It looks like. Lawrence, is there a way you can mute?
Yeah, JD can
Lawrence,
mute.
can you mute yourself? I think Lawrence and I are in the same room on different computers, so it might
Yeah.
be my voice coming through his computer. Did that do
Yeah.
it?
That's it. Go ahead.
He's froze.
Okay, great. Okay, so as we were discussing that together, establish the development standards and the zoning overlay for the Benton City South site. And I'll take you through them briefly. As you know, we did the sub-area planning process, the charrette as we call it, where we actually developed an illustrative site plan, as you see here, and also developed some of the vision documents, and did a very extensive public involvement and survey research, which I'll talk about again in a little more detail. But this is part of the implementing development regulations that are called for in state law, specifically the new zoning district and the development standards. And the general approach we've taken, as I mentioned last time, is to create a unique district that doesn't affect the regulations in the other parts of the city. If you want to change those, of course, that's something you might consider. But we're treating this as a standalone district that has its own requirements that are quite distinct and quite unique given the mixed use nature. And they're derived from the community survey, the preference survey, and the sub-area plan, and later approved by the Planning Commission for final enactment before you as the council. And it's a combination of specific requirements or rules of the road that are typical for any sort of public realm design standards, how the building faces the public streets, how it sits on the lot, and so on, along with the vision materials that give a sense of the character that the city is after, that the sub-area plan contemplated, that isn't necessarily a rigid requirement, but it's something that if an applicant comes forward with something that really responds to that vision, then it's likely to get a much smoother approval than if they sort of go off the map. If they do go off the map, they're going to need to justify that to you. That's the old may, should, shall approach, where you have things that somebody may do if they want to, or they're encouraged to do, or they must do if it's a shall document. And speaking as somebody who's been a developer and builder myself, I know that it's very important to just have clarity sometimes to say, okay, I know I need to do this. I know I can make money doing it, so fine, but please be clear about it. So that's what we're aiming for here. And that's, something that I think makes it a win-win for the city and for the private.
Michael, you're breaking up. And lost you there for a second.
So as the mayor was speaking there,
Michael, we can't hear you. You're breaking up.
two main elements. There are actually four. Can you hear now?
Nope.
Hear me okay?
You keep breaking in and
uh-oh.
out. You might
So,
shut off all your video.
Let's,
Hey, guys. On my screen, it's showing Michael has low bandwidth.
right now,
Hey, Michael, City Council, Mayor, this is Brandon. I apologize. I couldn't get my work laptop to connect, so I'm on my home computer. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Maybe I'll talk through this slide as Michael gets his.
sharing this screen.
All right, well, I can just kind of talk to that slide. So yeah, the process to set up the sub area, to Michael's point, is, setting this public hearing, which you all did for April 18th, to do first reading of it. And what that basically does is sets up the sub area boundary and adopts the plan that AHBL put together. And then Mr. Mahaffey's putting together the development standards for the sub area. And so that's the first push to get that adopted and the sub area limits defined. And then the next step is developing, a section in Title 17, which is in the subdivision section of your Benton City Municipal Code. And then that will point folks to the sub area requirements if they propose to do development projects, within the sub area. And then in addition to that, there will be development standards that are applicable to the sub area plan. So that'll be Title 20.37, which will define all the development standards. And so those are the four items Mr. Mahaffey was speaking to there.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm in a building that has poor internet. I was using my phone and for some reason it kicked me off of my phone and put me back on the poor internet here in the building. But anyway, let's keep trying. So thank you, Brandon, for covering the different pieces here. The draft ordinance that you have before you is the implementing ordinance that actually enacts all of these pieces. I won't go through that in detail. The district design standards, which I'm going to come back to and go into those in more detail in just a moment, because that's really the heart of it. The new zoning, the 20.37, which includes the design standards, but also includes some fairly standard zoning from the city language, the typical language that the city uses for zoning. Again, a mixed use zone that allows a lot of different uses, and the potential conflicts between those uses are covered by the design standards, which I'll come back to. This is what we call the regulating plan. It isn't a rigid plan that tells you what you have to do exactly where, but the applicants would be required to come forward to you and to the Planning Commission showing some version of this that they can justify to you based upon their understanding of the market readiness for those different uses in different areas. There's the special district that would also need to be created as Title 17, the subdivision amendment. There's a couple of other minor tweaks that need to be made also. I mentioned the public involvement that we've done. We've got quite a lot, 143 respondents, a lot of data, a lot of information about the priorities. The aesthetics are very important for the citizens, the commercial areas, growth of commercial areas, employment opportunities, et cetera. I've already covered this, so I won't spend a lot of time on it. But you've seen the visual preference surveys that we did that led pretty much directly to the specific requirements. And then I'm going to jump ahead. No, I tell you what. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I explain one thing real quick?
Please.
It's kind of an important detail for council. So in your packet, you'll notice you have the design charrette material, which is the product of work essentially that Michael's been putting together for like the vision of the sub area, you know,
And Lawrence.
what you want buildings to look like, the streetscapes, the connection to parks, you know. And then the other document that you guys have, or the council has, is the sub area plan, which was done by AHBL. And so that piece makes the connection to the Benton City comprehensive plan. So going forward, when the sub area is adopted and you have that zoning structure set up, and then let's say an applicant approaches Benton City and wants to do a project, one, it'll need to comply with, you know, the sub area zoning requirements, and then the development standards that are applicable in that 20.37. And then no different than when we would currently review a project against Benton City comprehensive plan to make sure it's meeting your goals and objectives. That'll be applicable to Mr. Mahaffey's product of work on the sub area vision documents, the design standards, and then also the sub area plan in your packet for consistency with Benton City comprehensive planning elements. So land use, housing, parks, utilities, capital facilities. So anyways, sorry, Michael.
Yeah, that's right. And, you know, our charrette process was part of the sub-area plan. We were actually consultants to AHBL. So what you have in the sub-area plan is the result of the charrette process. And AHBL simply took our work product and developed it into the formal sub-area plan as it's required to be part of your comprehensive plan. And that is what is being enacted now as part of your comprehensive plan amendment to include the sub-area plan. And I believe, Brandon, that's going forward as we speak, or will be shortly?
Yeah, so April 18th is the public hearing for council to consider adoption of the sub-area plan.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is take you through probably the most, the central document, one could say, which is the district development standards. I mentioned that we have the zoning, which is really just a mixed use zone that allows a lot of different uses. And where there are conflicts or issues of adjacency between those uses, those are covered by the district development standards. So I'll run through those, and I have the document up now. Can you all see it?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I mentioned last meeting the different parts of the document. I'll just give you a quick overview. There's an introductory section that explains what the document is, how it was created, how the stakeholder results fed directly into this document, the background issues, the economics that are, the opportunity of this project, how we actually develop the sub-area plan, and so on. Then the streets and rights of way, the different street sections and how those are handled, how streets and intersections are handled, the blocks and lots, how those are handled, minimum and maximum block dimensions, lot dimensions, and then the ones, the different setbacks and frontages for each of the different kinds of activities, uses, building types, et cetera. Then the building orientations and forms, again, the different kinds of buildings and uses that tell you where the building should be in relation to the public realm and how that can be treated, a sort of typical design standards language there. Then landscape signage and utilities that covers everything basically that's not the building. And then the last section of the main document is the building design guidelines, which give more specifics about the aesthetic characteristics that the public said that was so important to them. The appendices include the project pattern language, which I described previously. That's more of a vision document. Then there's some additional vision documents, imagery, that sort of opportunity you have with the wine industry growing so rapidly in the region, and the opportunities for wine tourism and economic development around that. Other opportunities, obviously the need for housing and so on. Then a document that covers the question of whether garages should be in the front or on alleys. And we've actually looked at that, and there are scenarios where a builder might find that very attractive actually to do an alley loaded plan. Not something we're requiring, but something that we are offering as an option. And then lastly, the detailed survey data to provide information about how we actually develop some of these guidelines. The introduction just talks about what the state law requires, what the document provides and how to use it, how it was created, what the stakeholder results were and how they fed into the design guidelines, some of the detailed discussion there. This is actually a reproduction of the pairs of images, the 12 pairs of images that were shown and what the actual survey results were, where there was a clear preference or where it was more ambiguous, and so on. And then some of the state documents that show how these different uses can be combined in the growth management website and so on. Economic factors, as I mentioned, very interesting situation, I think, right now coming out of COVID, where there are some new opportunities that I think Benton City is really well positioned to take advantage of that, that kind of opportunity that's emerging for new maker spaces, new smaller businesses, incubator businesses, and so on. Then moving into the more substantive parts of the document, the streets and rights of way. As you remember, we did develop an armature or a framework of street patterns. It isn't a rigid requirement, but it's something that the types of streets certainly the applicants would need to respond to, and the intention of this plan they would need to respond to, and perhaps come to you with modifications and the reason why they want the modifications. So then there's a section talking about street patterns and intersections, the different streets, bicycle lanes, intersection spacings, alleys if they have them, pedestrian pathways and cut throughs. Then the next section covers the actual street sections that show, for example, the main street. And here it is in the commercial area where it's just the two lanes side by side with parking on either side and then a nice generous sidewalk on either side. Here it is where the median opens up and begins to be wider. And in some cases, there's multifamily residential on either side. And then further down, it widens even further and there's single family residential on either side. So that section shows how that happens, shows the lane widths and so on. By the way, please jump in if you have any comments or responses, or if you'd like to just take a red line and send these comments to me, to us later, we can incorporate them that way as well. Local streets, these are the other streets that you saw in blue that cover the residential areas where you might have residential or you might have multifamily, single family residential or multifamily residential. Again, a fairly typical 2 lanes with parking on either side. The light industrial area where you need a little bit wider spacing to accommodate the big trucks going through. But again, it's still a slow pedestrian friendly environment and it's compatible with residential, compatible with families and kids and so on. And then the alleys, if they do have alleys, they can accommodate fire trucks and other vehicles as well. Moving further down, you've got Jacobs Road, that's an existing road. And there's a segment of that, as we're showing in the plan, that actually becomes part of the main street. So that would then take on the characteristics of the main street. But further down, you have the freeway on one side of Jacobs Road, and then you have the light industrial, or in some cases, the multifamily on the other side. And you need more of a green space, a greenway on the side there. Field Road, a similar situation where currently going through the site, you have the existing commercial, which is up high, and you have a swale on the other side. But then you have the light industrial on the opposite side. And you need to be able to accommodate some parking for folks who are maybe carrying on businesses or delivering light packages and so on. Paths and trails and so on are covered as well. Then the next section covers blocks, lots, and setbacks. That tells you what the different sizes of blocks are, the different sizes of lots. These are fairly typical numbers. Typically, you don't want to go more than about 300 feet without some kind of pedestrian passageway. It doesn't have to be a major street, but some way for pedestrians and bicycles to get through the blocks. You don't want them to be too long. Then there's a series of diagrams that show how, for example, a house with a garage facing the front would orient to the front of the house, and it would have a setback. Not a very big setback. We like to push the houses close to the street so that they're friendly, so that they have a nice frontage that's attractive for pedestrians. You don't just have a bunch of cars parked in front on the driveway. And then the garage that's set back a little bit so you don't have the garage right in your face as you're walking down the street. If they do have alleys, we've got a couple of options there that show how that can happen. It's nice to have the detached garage where you actually have a yard in the back, a nice big yard, but you can also have an attached garage with a side yard area, which is a nice way to do it. Good to have private outdoor space. And these are, by the way, all sort of traditional small town house types, which we heard very loud and clear that keep the character, the small town character of Benton City. Don't turn it into a sort of big multifamily monoculture. So we have these single family detached houses mixed in. We have the option of row houses, again, a similar configuration. The ability to do the garage that's attached or garage that's detached for a row house, a tandem garage where you get more of a yard in the back that allows a bit more private outdoor space, as I was saying, and live work row house. This is becoming a very popular type, especially coming out of COVID, where you can have an actual office in your home or even a little shop that faces out to the street that you can bring customers in, limited numbers of customers, small spaces to be sure, but a very nice option for people who can work from home and want to work from home. Multifamily, here's the configuration again with frontages, bringing the buildings a little closer to the street to make that pedestrian friendly experience for folks. Same thing for the commercial, bringing the building up to the sidewalk so you have a friendly facade where the shops are different shops and shop entrances and so on are close to the sidewalk, and then the sidewalk is a fairly generous space that allows people to walk and to park their car right in front of the shop if they want to drop something off or grab something quickly or park in back. Compatible industrial, again, a similar kind of configuration where you have a big parking lot essentially in the back, not right up on the street where it can become visually disruptive, but screened by the buildings themselves, the light industrial or whatever. And this can have loading bays and work areas and the areas where the wine barrels and all that sort of gear goes in the back. And some precedents that show how those buildings can actually be configured. When you can see here, the buildings are lined along the street and the parking is in the back. And then you do have some parking on the street as well, allowing folks to get in. Some fairly typical language about how those are configured, how the glazing works, how much storefront or windows and doors you have. That makes for a very traditional sort of Main Street character, very walkable, very appealing. Since I gave you the report in the last meeting, we've added a little bit of language about heights. We've allowed a 45-foot building height. Now that number can be adjusted depending on how you feel about that number, but that generally gives you 4 stories. Which is probably more than you would need in most cases for this particular market. But it also steps down as you get close to adjoining uses, so that if you're going to have a residential neighborhood, then the commercial neighborhood needs to step back and step down 50 feet from the property line, or a step back of 25 feet. The building can't come right up to the property line where there's a residence. Again, there's other mitigations of impacts that simply restrict noise, odor, excess lighting, and so on. And that is something that has to be controlled by the planning director at their discretion. The applicant needs to come up with an agreement that's satisfactory. And that'll happen as different users come and go. Those different users will have to respond to that. Multifamily buildings, again, similar kind of configuration, requiring windows and entrances on the street to make it a street-friendly building, parking in the back, and some parking at the sides, limited parking at the sides of the buildings, different prescriptions on the building forms and step backs. Again, language about the height and buffers. Compatible industrial buildings. Again, this is a residential mixed neighborhood, so you want kids on bikes, for example, to be able to ride their bike right through this neighborhood and be safe. So these are slow streets. They are streets that accommodate trucks and other vehicles, but they're also pedestrian-friendly streets, as you see in this really nice example from Sebastopol, California, that shows how that can be configured. A very rough and ready working environment, and yet it's also compatible with residential and commercial. Again, requirements about entrances, glazing, parking, and so on. Building forms, step backs. We're requiring, if they're going over 3 stories, that they need to step back from the street so that they're not looming over the street. An exception is made if the building jogs backwards and creates a recess. Side and rear elevations, we want those to be attractive as well. We don't want to have too much a blank wall, even though those are industrial buildings, but they need to be visually attractive because they might be looking right at a residential area. Again, additional language on heights and buffers, impacts on adjoining users, similar language to what you saw before. And then the single family attached and single family detached, again, it follows the same requirements that are going to be described in section 2. And then part 5 gives the specific design guidance, which I'll get to in a moment. Then part 4 covers landscape signage and utilities, some language about parks and open spaces, some language about fences, pergolas, and pavilions, signage and monumentation, utility pedestals and transformers, mechanical equipment. Don't put that right in the public realm. Screen that, put that in the alleys if you have them, put that in places where they're not obtrusive. Same thing with trash location and enclosures, screen those, make them attractive, etc. Again, all of these things are things that an applicant could come to you and say, well, I have a hardship and I can't do this because this reason, but here's what I think we can do instead and meet the intent of this ordinance. And you certainly have that discretion. Our goal is not to be too rigid, certainly not to discourage good economic uses that come along, but at the same time to give them rules of the road, to be on the same page with you as a city and as a council and as a planning commission to say, we understand what you want and here's how we're going to deliver that. And maybe there's things that we need to do a little bit differently because the market is telling us that right now. And we understand that. We've certainly, these documents have been crafted with that in mind. Building design guidelines, again, we want to encourage a strong character, a visually appealing character, traditional small town character. They can come to you with something different, as we've said before, but they need to explain what it is they're doing and why they're departing from the intentions as expressed in these documents. We talked about wine-related themes, hilltown design character, natural materials, appealing pedestrian-friendly building architecture. If they come to you with those, you're likely to approve them. If they come to you following these guidelines, they're likely to get ready approval. So I won't go through all of these in detail, but each of those you'll notice there's a preferred, a discouraged, and a prohibited. And this is to give them a sense of what the intention is, that you want to move in the direction of the preferred. You want more of what is in the preferred category and less of what is in the discouraged category, and ideally nothing that's in the prohibited category unless, again, they come to you and justify it. Different categories, building compositions, overall volumes, door and window placements and proportions, reveals and trim, roof structures. These can be very important, of course, when you have too many mushroom vents and other sort of visual clutter on the roofs. Soffits, fascia, trim, gutters, downspouts, roof materials, wall materials. When you have brick, when you have stucco, when you have other materials, how to handle decks and balconies, columns and beams, ornamental details, color palettes, landscape character, how to make it a very attractive, naturalistic characteristic. We could add some language here about low water, of course, not using tons of water to do large lawn areas that aren't being used for anything, perhaps in this day and age. We all recognize that that's getting to be hard to maintain. Fences and hedges, keeping it low in the fronts of homes on the yards so that the fronts of the houses are making it interesting for pedestrians, preserving the higher walls for the rear, and not having the ugly, unfriendly wall. So I'm going to stop there for a moment and ask if you have any comments or questions before I get into the appendix section. Anyone have any comments? Questions?
I guess not, Michael.
Hearing none. Lawrence, do you want to add
Oh,
any?
you did?
anything?
Yeah, of course, I have questions. I know everyone wants to move fast. I have a couple questions real quick. Thank you.
Yeah, please.
So thank you so much. And it looks like you've addressed parking. Do you feel like you have any concerns about the parking, or is this what you've seen in other places and it works well?
This is what we've used before and it has worked well. You always have to be careful, of course, to not underpark where people are, circling, looking for parking and they can't find it and they get mad and they leave and then you lose a customer. And having been on the private side, I'm sympathetic to that problem, but you also don't want to overpark. You don't want to have empty parking lots sitting there or empty parking spaces that you as a developer have to pay for, and then it isn't actually being used. So the approach that we tend to take in terms of parking standards is to as much as possible, let the market determine what you can, what you require or what you're going to provide, so that the applicant comes to you and says, I believe that, 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet of commercial or whatever the number is will be adequate here. And take that approach rather than a rigid standard that may or may not really reflect what the market is going to require. The other point is that these things change over time. So it's important for applicants to think about future proofing so that if they do provide more parking than maybe they need, then they have the opportunity to convert some of that parking to another building or open space or something else. Or conversely, if they need more parking, that they've created the ability to do structured parking, the parking decks, if and when the market will justify that, as maybe things get more popular, more people come, and suddenly you find you need more parking. So we believe pretty strongly in a market-based determination of that, and with a bit of future proofing in the planning to make sure that it's something you can adjust over time.
Thank you so much. The other question I had was about the zoning map, and I appreciate it's just kind of a suggested zoning map, but at the top east, so at the top of the hill, it's kind of all green space now. And I know we talked about in some of the charrettes and feedback around Iconic Hotel. Does that kind of fall away based on how you have the design coming in, or is that it's just a suggestion? Don't worry about it.
No, it's of course, we call this an illustrative plan, the one that has the color and the trees and all that. And it shows those buildings, it shows the iconic hotel at the top. And then there's what we call the regulating plan, and that's the one with the colors on it. And but the reality in the actual overlay zone is that it is a mixed use zone. So if an applicant comes to you and says, I have a fantastic boutique hotel, I want to put it right at the top of the hill, here's what I want to do, then they've really been given permission to do that by the illustrative plan and by some of these vision documents that show exactly that.
Thank you. And if someone wanted to
So
come
it
in-
doesn't preclude.
Thank you.
Go
And
ahead.
to the same end about a school, if in the future or as planning advances about a school, there's flexibility in that too, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
there absolutely is, although schools are not specifically provided in the zone right now, but schools can be included. Brandon, correct me if I'm wrong here. Schools can be included in this zone without having to do a comp plan amendment. Isn't that right? Or you can do an amendment just for the school if that becomes a use?
Yeah, you're correct. They're outright permitted in the residential areas, the open space areas. So yes, you're correct.
And by the way, we have that green area shown in the plan right now because most of that is unbuildable. The slope is too steep to accommodate houses or even streets, unless they were really, like contour following streets with very, very expensive houses. And frankly, we wouldn't recommend it. It's just not a good, a suitable place for construction. It's a better space for open space for, a nice area for a family to walk up a trail up the hill and whatever.
Yeah, on that note, I'll make a comment too. And Mayor Lehman had asked me for the SEPA comments, and I was traveling today, so I didn't get that back to you. I apologize. So it's gone through SEPA, as you're aware. And there were comments from the Department of Archaeological and Historic Preservation, which
Right.
They'll require a cultural review, which is obvious.
Right.
And then Washington State Department of Fish and Wildlife, they're going to require biological assessment, and that's standard too. So they're going to be concerned about critical areas, to Mike's point, and shrub snap. And so some of those areas will need to be mitigated and protected as open space.
Right.
And then the other agency that commented was WashDOT with traffic impacts to I-82. So, going forward, as your sub-area plan is established, and then let's say, developer comes in and wants to do a project, there will be requirements, based on cultural review, biological assessment, and what's allowed on the property, and then traffic impacts to I-82 and, local access roads and stuff.
And that's all very typical for what would be required of an applicant when they do that. And of course, they're also going to need to meet with the city and work out their particular street designs and intersection designs and so on. And so that's all very typical.
Thank you. And then I think my final question is just about its procedural, the public meeting notice. Do we have to notice people in the county who are adjacent to it or only within the city limits?
Brandon,
So
do you
for
know
this
that?
one, yeah, I got this one. Okay, so going into the April 18th public hearing, and then the first reading of the ordinance. So you all will have my staff report, officially. I'll present a staff report that provides a recommendation, and, of course, it's going to be approval because everything of concern we can mitigate. We'll have to revise the SEPA DNS to do a mitigated DNS or incorporate conditions for approval based on those agencies. And so you'll have a good understanding of, the A to Z details that give you confidence in casting a vote to approve or deny the sub-area plan. Objectively, what's happened, what's been completed, when the planning commission had the public hearing, what occurred with the SEPA review, and so on and so forth. And so The public notification with county residents is, I believe, 500 feet from the edge of the boundary. And then we need to do a public notification in the local media that you all select.
And did all that happen, Brandon?
I'd have to ask Carla.
I have not done it, and I don't know who's within 500 feet of the edge of the boundary.
So Brandon, correct me if I'm wrong, but at least for the design guidelines, a public process is not required. It's optional for the city
Or the design standards
design standards. Yeah.
or the development standards. Yeah, I believe those can just be, considered for approval when they're ready. But we need to send them to Department of Commerce for 16 review.
Right. But we did, for the sub-area planning process, we did do the public notice, as I recall. I wasn't involved in that directly, but I know it did happen, and we did get the 143 folks participating in that. So it's certainly something that has engaged a lot of the members of the public already. I can't speak to the current process and who's been notified.
So I guess my ask would just be, if we're calling April 18th a public hearing, and we've said it over and over and over again in the session, whether it's required or not, we need confirmation that proper notice has been completed, or that it's not a public hearing, and maybe we just pause in advance and the administration can take it offline. But I would hate to get to Monday, the 18th, and that's not clear. And I'll ask the question again at the beginning of the meeting or when we get the agenda. Just a procedural question, just to make sure whatever need to get done gets done, please. I don't know.
Well, I can have it done tomorrow, but I do not know who is within 500 feet of that boundary. I don't even know where to look for that.
Yeah, the county maps. Can you help her with
I
that?
can,
Yeah.
Carl,
Yeah,
I can query the parcel owners on the county GIS map and send you a list.
GIS should have all that data.
You all set the public hearing on April 4th, though, right? That's already been done.
For the
April
18th.
18th.
I think
Yeah.
on the April 4th meeting, we
Yeah,
said,
they said it. I need to put it into the paper, which is no big deal, and post it here and online. But I need to give it to the public also, who's within 500 feet of that boundary.
I don't know how much time. we need.
Is there a required time?
I don't know. I would have to look it up.
Brandon.
I'll verify that for you.
Yeah.
I can verify that. But I just want, but on April 4th, I mean, you guys or the city council set a public hearing for April 18th, right?
Yes.
Okay, because you do have the option of not to hold a public hearing, but I feel, my opinion, I think it's a good thing to do, so.
Is it legal to have a public hearing without proper notice, Brandon? That you're working to confirm what the timeline is?
I'll confirm the timeline. No, I mean, if we have
Okay, thanks.
municipal code, if we have a requirement for specific notifications, and if we're not meeting that, no, it's not good.
Thanks.
I'll verify that.
I don't have any
So
additional.
I'll just very briefly wrap this up because we're almost to the end here of giving you the overview. And as I said before,
We lost
and
you.
make it available to absolutely believe it. Population as possible and of what we're trying to achieve here.
Michael, we're only getting bits and pieces again.
Okay. So in the appendix section, as I mentioned, we have a number of sort of vision cities. And
So you're still breaking up, Michael. I don't know what you did last time. You fixed it, but now it's back.
maybe I'll go. Can you hear me now?
No, well, I heard you ask if you could hear me now.
Okay. Let me just quickly wrap this up because we're almost done.
Okay,
So as I said, you have a remarkable opportunity with this really Hilltown setting and wine country character, opportunities for hike and bike trails, welcoming gateways, commercial activities around wine, place for a boutique hotel. That's a specific pattern there. Calling out beautiful signage and wayfinding, different materials, different precedents, again, evoking the character of Benton City, the small town character and so on. I don't think I need to go into any more of this in much more detail, but again, you've seen some of these already in the design standards where we talked about these different positions of the buildings and so on. Then the next section is a vision documents, and these came out of the charrette. This would be looking up the hill through the commercial area to perhaps an iconic hotel up at the top there. That's what it might look like. This is what the colors and materials might look like. The character, obviously, the beautiful hills in the distance, the wines, vineyards, and so on. The light industrial, very appealing characteristics. Some of our drawings showing how the buildings can cluster around public spaces and step down the hills, perhaps cottages clustering together, clustering around public spaces. Again, this is a precedent that the mayor noted that's in Park City, Utah. Something that might evoke that character, the stone and so on. I mentioned this project already. This is in Sebastopol, California, a light industrial space that works quite well. Precedent imagery, we don't want to literally look like Tuscany or try to look like Tuscany, but evoking that feeling of, very attractive buildings in the vineyards in the landscape and so on. This section really aimed at builders and showing that there are indeed precedents for this kind of project that are very profitable, very successful, and certainly add a lot to the character of the community as well as the bottom line for the developer and the builder. So it's maybe not familiar in this particular area as much as other areas, but it's certainly, this traditional small town urban character can be quite popular and quite economically successful. There are national builders that are doing this now, Pulte Homes and David Weekley Homes and others. Examples just to show. The last two sections I'll just mention briefly. One of them is looking at how putting garages on alleys can actually be less expensive than putting garages in the front of the house, which many builders don't recognize that, but we've been working with a civil engineer and running the numbers and showing that there is a optimum point there. And depending on the shape of your lot, it might make more sense to do front loaded, but in other configurations, it makes a lot more sense to be alley loaded. These are the actual numbers that show what the calculations are. These are articles that show how in some cases, like in Denver, alleys are very popular and really coming on strong. In other places, the builders are saying, we're not so sold on that. Again, the cost is one of the factors that they're looking at. And this is, again, if you're going to do alley loaded, there are some factors to keep in mind about how to do that profitably. And that's what we've shown there. So we're trying to give a realistic assessment to the builders and developers of what their options are. The last section is just the survey data, more detail showing exactly what we got, the responses and the detailed comments from the 143 folks. I don't think all 143 responded, but we certainly got a lot of comments, a lot of good information and good inspiration. So apologies for the weak internet connection, but as I said, I'll make a recording and make that available so that we can make that, put that up online and make it more useful for the members of the public to be prepared to participate in the hearing.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael. Appreciate it. Does anyone else have any more questions? Okay. Hearing none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so then we are going to move to item E, Benton City Hall preliminary cost estimate. And that's Josh Damon. Yes, please. Thank you, Josh.
Good evening. So nice to see everybody again. This is Mike working.
Yeah, you gotta
Yes.
get it a little
A little
closer.
closer. Thanks.
You can flex it down, so it's, there you go.
All right, so I was tasked with getting an estimate to repair City Hall. I got with a company called Bolt Engineering and we wrote up an estimate, which I sent in. And I'm not gonna go over all the numbers and every line item detail, but it was broken up by division based on the original drawings provided from what's this, Spec Engineering?
Spink.
Spink Engineering, thank you. So the estimate came back at $867,000. That's quite a big number. Keep in mind though, that is covering the asbestos, that tiling and other portions we have. And this is the plans as drawn currently. There, we had Apollo, Campbell and Fowler come out to give some opinions and some advice on how to kind of maybe restructure some of the buildings and costs. And there are some significant recommendations they gave that I have recorded to reduce this cost. If this is something this council would like, basically it's mostly to do with the HVAC and electrical, how the plans were drawn. It forces the building to use a central air unit instead of some mini splits and some other things that would be more cost effective. One of the big things is there's units on the roof that would have to come off. The streets would have to be blocked off for cranes and support beams would have to be put in for these units. And that's a huge cost to whoever's going to tackle this project. And they had a way around that by saying, hey, if we were to remove these walls or make these 3/4 walls, we could allow airflow, get some mini splits, some other things. They had some good ideas. So this is where the number sits now. I'll provide this to the council however they want it. If you guys got questions on it, I don't know if you guys had a chance to see it at all. Not at all. I could try to present it on the screen by getting on Teams, or we could just go over it in the next public hearing if you guys want.
Well, I think we should talk about some of the things that you and I talked about. And the idea with the mini splits was actually Bill Reed's idea to get rid of some of that extreme cost
Yeah.
to the HVAC, because
Yeah.
that's really the most,
Campbell is greatly on board with those mini splits that you were talking about. They really like that idea. They believe it would save between $75,000 to $120,000 depending on how we want it set up. Because our estimate came in for just the HVAC at $250. From them, Apollo came back about $400.
so it's significant savings if we do the mini splits. And what you told me, and correct me if I'm not phrasing this correctly, but Apollo will not give you an exact estimate until
So
they-
both Campbell and Apollo, they would like to see load documentation that I didn't get. I'm trying to think of what it's called. Basically, there's the load bearing of the building, where things could be placed, as well as maybe some design changes based on their recommendations, because how it's drawn, it's really not feasible for them to do the systems that they have or readily available or want to put in there. It's just not cost effective. So they had reached out and said, hey, they just need more information from whoever the engineering firm might have that
well, the
information.
engineer is here,
Oh.
so he has that. But one thing that we kind of kicked around is right now on the north wall, there are 4 offices. There's a meeting room, 2 offices in the middle, and then one at the very end. And maybe we don't need to put walls in those middle offices, just leave it as kind of a
Mhm.
bullpen, use dividers, something to get the airflow going.
That was one of
in
the big
itself would
recommendations.
help cut the cost way down in that area.
So the primary recommendations from them was to use 3/4 walls in the upper stairs for the offices so they can allow the airflow. They weren't sure how that was going to affect the equipment schedule. That's what I was looking for before. We didn't have an equipment schedule, at least that wasn't provided to go off of to see about the bearing of those systems. And then they're willing to do these bigger companies like the Apollo and the Campbell, they like to give bids, not estimates. So when their job is ready, they'll come and give you a number. But if they can get drawings, how exactly you want it. Because I know that we took like the electric fireplaces out and some other things to try to save cost. Just because they were for pretty. But when they came to walk it down, they would really like to see the half walls and ideally put mini splits in the lower and upper sections. And get away with the main units on the roof because it is a huge cost expense.
Mhm. Yes.
I guess I would just be interested to see the drawings because I've never seen them.
Oh, you haven't?
No,
Oh, okay.
Okay.
unless we have them
um,
somewhere. I agree. It's just interesting to talk about something that we've not seen, so
Yeah.
Email them out and.
that would be great.
So we can revisit this or whatever you want. I was just asked to talk about what the cost was and kind of what comments I got back from the contractors were. There's some great interest in there and some good ideas from them. And I can work with whoever to get feedback to see about getting what we need for those guys to actually give proper numbers.
Yes. Okay, so I think I'll just describe a little bit about what's in there since we don't have the picture. But we had handicap bathroom upstairs, which was added. They had designed the men's bathroom in the downstairs is an ADA bathroom. So there are 2 in the old basement of City Hall. We would basically leave the basement as it is, except for putting some wallboard around so that the wiring for the electrical can go behind the wall, and then the mini splits would be in the walls. But finishing off also the part where the sheriff goes, because he does want to move back in that space. We could still use part of the bigger open space in the basement for storage, which we definitely could use. And we can also rent it out. We have a need for the summer program to have extra rooms. So that could be some return on investment for us between the sheriff and the using the lower level for rentals. The upper unit, I think we had this was removing the asbestos, putting in a new floor,
Knocking the 2 walls out.
and removing a lot of the walls so that it's more open. In fact, most of the space is just open. And then, except we had those offices, as I described on the front, there would be a counter similar to what we have here up front for the girls to sit. So the other thing is that we're still in the running for the 169,000 or whatever it was for the asbestos abatement. So we won't know that for a little while, but and we have 200,000 already set aside. So it could be that we have some 300 and some thousand towards the amount. And if we can get this down in the 700,000 range, I think then we're in a good spot. I would like to see the sheriff back in there, and with bringing on extra people, I think this is a good place for public works and maintaining that function over there. We may need to have another clerk there, public works clerk or something, but in short order, we're gonna need space. So that's kind of the bottom line as we see it right now. What we don't know is how much it will cost Alan to revise those plans that open it up so that we can see about getting the HVAC. So Alan, do you have any ideas on what that would cost?
I don't, and it actually would be, so I don't have an idea on the cost, and it would actually be the architect that would go through some of the changes in the walls and whatnot. And so that would have to be kind of getting the list from the different contractors, what they recommend, then giving it to Tate Architecture. And then she could give us an idea what the cost would be.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So
I'm
that's where,
sorry, I didn't know everybody didn't have the plans for the building. I should have provided those. I thought that they were a public item here. But what we'll do is, if it's okay with everybody, at another moment, once we get more information together, we'll re-present this.
okay.
Thank
All
you.
right.
I'd also be interested in how the contractors broke it down in there. If you're able to pass that information. on.
Yeah, I have that here. I'll provide that with it as well.
Thank you.
And Madam Mayor, thanks so much for working on getting the city hall preliminary cost estimates. I think when we have this on a list in prior discussions, we also asked that the administration work on, along with this, coming up with alternatives such as selling the building, the value of the building, and seeing if we could locate the plans from a long time ago. to
Yes,
build
and I
on
have
another area.
those. I have those. I have two estimates. The first one came in at 125,000, which used estimates from in the area, but also in small towns. That one was between 100 and 125. And then the second one was based on buildings in Kennewick exclusively. And that one came in at 225.
And was that done by like a real estate individual?
Yes, two different real estate firms, yeah. I have those. I did not bring those because I was more interested in talking about this.
And how about building elsewhere? Were you able to get any more information on the
Well,
land next to the
I haven't
library?
gotten an estimate to build a brand new building, no, because we don't even know where we would put it at this point.
Didn't we have a discussion about looking at the property with the library?
Yes, we did.
Oh,
Mhm. And
Because
did-
we already own that property, right?
Mhm.
I think so.
Yes,
and we had plans
Well, that-
for some initial plans, or maybe it was just discussions
for what?
for the space next to the library.
Was there?
That was the original plan. and They had architectural drawings and everything
Yeah.
under the prior administration.
And did we find those plans? Do we know where they're at?
Oh, we have them, yeah, we have them somewhere, I don't know.
I guess that would be interesting if we could see those.
What were we looking for? I'm sorry.
The
The
plans.
original plan over by the library.
By library, yes, I can give you all that. And there's been a study, a little report done. So when I
So it's-
email this out, I'll get this to
Yeah.
everybody.
It's like 2004, 2006, something like that, right? Somewhere it's almost 20 years out of date in terms of cost, but
I'm not worried about the cost. I guess I'm just worried about how the plans were. I mean, we can definitely look at the two and see which one would be more favorable, more suitable for the citizens of Benton City if we're gonna invest almost $1 million in fixing up the old building, if we're gonna be coming close to having a brand new one. And then, if the possibility comes to be able to sell it and make a couple $100,000 off of it.
Okay. So let's see. All right, then we have an item for approval, but I think, we need to have a discussion about it.
Madam Mayor, before we move to the item for approval, item number F is other items for discussion.
Do we have something?
Well, I have a question, which is the $2 million federal appropriation. Will that be the topic for the next workshop? Is there a deadline by which we need to determine if the city is in a position to accept it?
I think, that Sherry's been working on that and she's not here tonight.
Okay. Okay.
So where are we at on some of the other projects? Since we're on item F. Reference like the fences and stuff at the parks and irrigation system.
The things we agreed we could definitely move forward on.
And some boulders. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Sorry. I guess with the parks, we got the estimate for the boulders. We got some rough estimates for fencing, still waiting to hear back from somebody. We have an estimate for the cost of the materials for the irrigation. And then we were kind of, we lost Marcos, who was kind of leading that. So we're picking that up, Jose and I. And the one thing we were trying to gauge is we heard about possible volunteers to come in and do that work for the irrigation system.
Yeah, happy to have a separate chat. I think there's definitely community involvement to help set up with the irrigation. I think that the step sequentially would be the city needs to be extremely clear
Right.
on what permits are required for them to write to themselves and put in their file and what the process is. So let us know when it's shovel ready.
Okay.
And we think we're close to approval. And I think we could invite some of our, friends in. And are they going to be covered by insurance? Do we need to go find more insurance? What's the city's requirements on volunteers that you're going to want? No problem getting
Right.
people to go out for the weekend at all.
Okay.
Absolutely happy to. And I think we can work through insurance to provide the appropriate coverage from various organizations and stakeholders. But I think very respectfully, we need help to make that clear.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a problem to get people out. We're getting to a place where talking about irrigation, we're already getting late to put out
Right.
the other pieces, but I
Yeah.
don't see that as a concern. I think
Yeah.
the community really wants to see these things come together. So please just,
Right.
let us know. Feel free to reach out to me or we can find another contact for you at the
Right.
time that you're ready for those discussions.
And another issue that has come up, we feel that the developer needs to do a little grading at the Blacktop Park. And they're the lead guy on the project ended up having triple bypass surgery a couple weeks ago. So that's put a little threw us a little curveball on the getting to that issue. So right now we're working on who the new contact will be and meeting with them. So
Perfect.
we will I'll try to get some more information. I guess this week so we can get it in the packet. So
And I think we're ready for the bridge inspection that's coming.
yes, on Wednesday, the subconsultant will do inspection of the piers. They'll be on Wednesday. The actual deck top and structure. we're waiting to hear from them. I believe it's gonna be next week for that.
Okay.
And I know there's a lot of projects, Alan. Thank you so much.
Yep.
How about the turning the tennis courts into a soccer? 3-on-3 and RCO commitments. Any news there? Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, I guess I don't have any new information on that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan.
From our last council meeting, has anybody, Mayor, have you discussed with him speed bumps or anything on 7th Street?
No, not since the last council.
The mayor did bring it up to me, in a passing discussion and asked me to put together a task order for doing that, study on that.
Did we talk about 13th turning into 14th also? The
Yes,
chamber did
we
a
did.
fantastic job in the community for the Easter egg hunt. Man, these cars were flying down like nothing else though Saturday
Yeah.
morning.
Yeah, and we actually, Alan and I did talk about this, adding Kendall Road because that's typically a speeding place, 7th and 13th.
Yeah,
13th
and I believe
events.
looking at finding some kind of structure or impediment to people going fast, it can be used at several locations, so.
Crosswalks. Alan was working in crosswalks already. Those were already listed in the last update. Sorry.
Where are we at in that whole design? And
We are waiting for Department of Transportation to give us the DBE goal, the disadvantaged business enterprise goal for the engineering. Once we get that, then we can put it out to add for selection of engineer.
And is that just for one of the crosswalks or for all of the money? For the
It
crosswalks?
is for the crosswalks and the bike trail.
Okay.
The paved trail. So, we sent it off probably 2 weeks ago now. And Carla hasn't heard anything back on that. So,
Hopefully here soon then.
yes. And so once we get that, we'll, Carla will put an ad in the paper, for request for qualifications.
yeah, it's for the bike trail, but what about our other one down at the boat launch? Where are we at with
The,
electrical and all that, the crosswalk there? with the lighting?
that was gonna be incorporated in designs of a pedestrian crossing.
Okay,
So that the pedestrian crossing project overall is in the same boat with that DBE. And then the crosswalk at the boat launch will be a little more involved than the other crosswalks, just because of trying to get more electrical and the conduit in the ground.
And did we ever decide up there at the school, were we gonna do a crosswalk where it could light up also to where it would flash for the truckers coming down? Would be able to
Yes,
see
yes.
it? Okay,
There's 6 locations, one's at, in order, I'll try to get them in order, at,
Abby,
the boat launch park,
Abby,
yeah, in Abbey. Then going up, it would
Second.
be at Grace, intersection at Grace, where the majority of the kids cross there. Then up at the high school, on Tybee Road in the park area. Then we come back down to another crossing, at the church
Mhm.
where the kids cross there. So that's 4. One at Chris. And then one at Dollar General in second. Those are the 6 locations. And I think that's the order, priority order. So when we go out to bid, you know, we only have a certain amount of money, so those first 3 will be the priorities, yeah.
Okay, anything else?
trying to think if there is anything else.
No, there's a lot more, believe me. Okay, so the next item is contract for website improvement and social media, which we desperately need to have work done on. And Dan drafted a preliminary contract. Wendy, I wanted to do this within my spending limit, my $2,500 limit. And then in reading through this contract, there are parts in here that give, if we want to add some other tasks to this contract, it required a dollar amount per hour. So we researched website maintenance and that sort of thing, and it ranged anywhere from $19 to $30 an hour. So we offered Wendy $23 an hour, and she said that would be fine. She had also, on your last page, developed a list of 27 things that she would like to do to the website. And some of these things are really important because the way it's set up right now, when Carla posts something through the administrative site, it only comes up on her computer. It doesn't show up on the website. And there's no names next to the numbers of the ordinances. And so, Wendy, why don't you talk a little bit about this section on how you can improve those things and other things?
For the ordinances or the website in general?
Oh,
So
all
yeah,
of it.
you guys see the list that this was just what I saw going through the website myself, like
Mhm.
as a layman, I guess. I mean, this isn't, I don't work in City Hall, so I've asked City Hall employees and the mayor to produce a list of things that they also have seen, but there's a lot of stuff that I saw just as a person from the outside. The social media feeds, I know that's really important too. There is a way to link to make this easier for City Hall employees. So like if they have access to their Facebook page and they just post water is out on Chris Avenue, we'll have it set to where all they have to do is post to Facebook and it'll automatically generate over to the website. So they only have to hit one thing. So Carla won't be necessary to be there to make sure that an alert is posted to the website anymore. A lot of your community links aren't even active links. Like at the bottom of your page, there's a Facebook icon. That doesn't even lead to your guys' Facebook page. Obviously your picture, you guys aren't up to date. No, nothing's up to date. There's a lot of stuff in the past 2 years, I would say, would be the majority of the issues that have just been overlooked, not done, or put in the wrong spots. So I would like to clean those up.
Carla, does this seem like when you look through the list, do these things all seem necessary and would be useful and helpful?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was gonna say, I've been on, our site and it's very difficult to navigate and a lot of the stuff comes up error or no information there. So I think getting us up to speed to where it's easier for especially the residents of Benton City to navigate what we have to offer and what's out there, and being able to maybe lessen the load for Carla on trying to get things broadcasted out to the citizens of Benton City. I think it's probably money well spent. What are you thinking? I know you have a lot, your list is huge, and so it looks like a lot of hours. What is your overall, what are you thinking? How many hours per week are you thinking that you're going to dedicate to?
I mean, I can dedicate whatever you guys need because I don't sleep much. But what I did for the bid for the $2,500 was, let's get through this. Let me help train city staff on how to manage their social media and the website as best as possible. That way Carla doesn't have to call me every time she needs to put something up, so it's not charging the city. I think that all of, at least my list here, would probably take, and let me say this, depending on whether or not I am provided the information that I'm needed in a timely manner, probably 80 to 100 hours.
Okay.
And I think that fell within around the 2,500 plus the training. and the website or the Facebook management.
I do know that going through the ordinances and the resolutions that people just put numbers on and did not label what they were, it's going to be very labor intensive.
So can I ask a question from that perspective? I mean, if you have them in a file, but they need scanned or something else, is there any opportunity for any more supportive for a one-time activity of something we're supposed to do to put the title if you're reformatting the table? We understand that might be out of the scope of
Say that
ours.
again, I'm sorry.
So you have an ordinance number, right?
Yes.
But then if you look back, let's say 2018, it gives you kind of a little description, which is super cool because you don't have to open everyone.
So that's what I plan on. It stops at a certain year and you can see 2021 is the first thing to current. All the ordinance descriptions need to be updated. So it's really not that many. It's just 2021 and up. When I went back, it was, all the other ones were filled in. They were filled in. Yep.
It doesn't show that one.
You're looking on the administrative end. If you actually go to the website, like just as a consumer, it's there. But it stops at 2021.
It does.
So yes.
And then people call you and trying to figure out the ordinance and
Yeah.
I'm in the same boat as them. I'm like, well,
So once we
start
get
clicking
those-
on all of them.
And see, and that's why we're having problems looking up the new ordinances because there's no keywords for them to be found with. So like when you do keywords, you're getting all these old ordinances because they do have the descriptions added. So we can get the 2021 until current, and then if there's any missing that aren't currently on there that are newer, we'll have to get those added
So the
too.
ones that I put on when I came on and actually put a description, it's not showing the description on this.
I don't think so. I'm pretty sure it was 2021 and up, but I don't think so.
Right.
But when I went in there, I could see. Yeah, I know. It might be just a little click.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be something stupid. Like I haven't gotten into the building of the website too, just what you and I did. So I mean, it might be just stupid, like clicking that button like it was to remove that COVID banner. I mean, the COVID banner at the top is now gone. City Hall is now open full time.
It definitely
So that was my first task.
doesn't sound like the highest and best use of Carla's time to be spending time figuring out how to get the city website to work efficiently.
I honestly think that if we get this all up to date, it'll be so easy for them to just maintenance it on a regular basis. And then if they need me, they can call. I'm just down the road. But I think once it gets caught up and all these things are there, they'll feel comfortable again.
Can I ask a question? And I don't know who, whether it would be you or some Carla or whatever. But if you're gonna plugging things into Facebook or some other multimedia feed, will it be preserved as a document that cannot be erased accidentally? Because it's a public record and we could be,
If it's a public record, I would recommend that we post it as a public record and not just a social media feed. What I'm saying is like just emergency shutdowns, like water shutdowns and stuff that aren't getting out to the community right now. That we could utilize it for that stuff, like last minute quick, posts, not public meetings or hearings or anything.
But see, I don't think that Facebook, social media can't be used for public notices. Yeah, you can give so people know what's going on or just as a.
but if it's coming out of the city, whether we would prefer it to be or not, it will be a public record that we have.
Okay, well then I can teach her how to.
Right.
Quickly
I mean,
add 'em.
I'm just saying, it's gotta be like on our website. It's gotta be posted at like City Hall, so it's like there's a board up here that I post everything on. And it has to be given to the newspaper, whether the newspaper runs it or not. You still send it to the paper to run it, but as far as social media, Facebook and stuff, it's not considered giving people notice.
I'm not talking about notice. I'm talking about anything, any document that comes from the city.
Anything written has to
Anything
be
written.
able to be preserved.
Yeah.
And we ran into this already in this discussion before. The Facebook is controlled by the city. Our staff has one who has control over it. And
Okay,
as long as they're not erasing it, Facebook has no plans to shut them doors tomorrow. So, and I think they checked on that too at the time about how long that record is going to be maintained through Facebook. And
But the Facebook page that we have right now is connected to JB's personal account.
No, any business page has to be connected to a personal account.
Yeah.
So that kind of creates a little bit of an issue.
We can connect it to multiple people. It doesn't just have to be one.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say I'd do a couple admin to
Yeah,
where if.
Cause I'd
JB
like to be added to be able to perform this stuff.
Yeah.
To get it done. I strongly feel Jenny needs to be added as code enforcement.
Right. I did.
And you got on there now, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, like we can put multiple people. There's no limit to how many people you can have managing it. Yeah, and we can talk about that. We can get you set up, but it has to be under a personal Facebook page as the maintainer. Yeah,
And this, I'm guessing, was just a discussion. Right now, or,
Well, what I was hoping is that you would let Dan and I finish this contract out officially and move forward with it, if that's a possibility.
Well, what are we talking about finishing out? Is just. Is there some major
Oh,
change?
no, he has to type in the $2,500 and the $23 an hour for extra.
And if you look
her
at the
name.
bottom of page 7, some of my notes are still included.
I just had a question on it. It says 2,500 per year. Is that what that says per year?
Yes.
Okay, when we had discussed it, I thought it was for me to get done the list that you guys had and train the employees, and then after that. It would go to the 23 if I was on call.
Okay, yeah.
Is
sure.
that-
That's,
Cause
We can
because
make-
like I said, I think I'm already putting in
yeah.
at minimum hours, I'll be putting in the $23 an hour for that 2,500.
Okay,
That makes sense.
Would, and maybe just for the sake of clarity and making sure that we're plugging in the text as it needs to be for all of us to understand, is your list of all of those items what is covered by the 2,500?
Yes,
And then anything else is the 23?
yes.
per hour. Okay.
And included in this would be also the training of the staff.
Okay,
so I guess I would suggest maybe bringing it back to a city council agenda night with all the corrections that need to be done, since this is technically like a workshop.
Can we approve things at a workshop?
well, this was actually, it's a special meeting. Workshop's a special meeting, and this was posted, I think it's on the agenda. This way, wasn't it?
yeah, got it posted as an
Council
approval.
could approve it. I mean, you know, don't have to, but I mean, you could approve it with the instructions that those changes that we talked about be plugged in. Or you could have it come back to you in final form.
Is a week gonna hurt you, Wendy, or
It's not hurting me, it's them. Ask the staff.
Carla?
I can start whenever.
You know what? I do what I can get done.
Yeah.
So,
Is it going to bother you if we wait until the next meeting, or is it something you need done today? Okay,
Well, it'd be great to have a cleaned up contract. It sounds like no one's saying no.
Oh, I'm not opposed to it. I'm just
Um,
saying maybe getting all the language
yeah.
and everything.
yeah.
It'd be,
that's what
yeah,
she said.
it'd be great to populate the rest of the blanks though, and in here it says 1-year term, whether it's a 1-year term, a 2-year term or whatever, there's some good verbiage. And then put it in the agenda, the packet in the agenda for approval there, because I think then also, just in terms of everyone being transparent, it's really helpful when the stuff in the packet is put into the packet that everyone can see. I
Just,
think that
just so you know,
good for us.
I would also prepare an agenda if it's gonna be done at the next meeting, a resolution, I mean. The resolution, I'm just,
Okay. Resolution to sign the contract.
correct.
Yep, that's fine. With me, anybody else?
No, I'm good with that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Right,
next
thanks, Wendy.
Tuesday. Okay. All right, well, I think that completes our agenda since we took the executive session off.
Can I make a motion to adjourn?
Mayor Lehman, sorry, Councilwoman Funk. I was gonna come back to the public notice question, just real quick to clarify that for you all. Is that okay?
Yeah, good.
Okay, I just wanna make sure. we're all
Can't
clear.
hear you.
We lost you again, Brandon.
Oh, can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I looked up the optional public hearing process in the Benton City Municipal Code. So it's entitled 2.70.190. And this is important because for the ordinance to approve the sub-area plan, that went through Planning Commission public hearing. So that was the required public hearing for a type 4 application. So the optional public notice is there's no specific requirements for timing of when you need to do that. And it's entirely optional. And then to the extent that Section B states, the city's failure to provide optional notice in the section described, because it says you can do, anything from a list of folks that want to know, public notice in the newspaper, but failure to meet any of those or timeframes does not compromise or does not provide grounds for invalidation on any permit decisions. So I just want to be clear, the public hearing for April 18th is optional. It's not required. And there are no, timeframe requirements for public notifications. And then it's at the discretion of the city council or city staff of, who might be interested in knowing that there's a public hearing. And so you all should know, we do have a list of folks, an email list from folks that have been paying attention. And so that was on my to-do list to send them an update and let them know what was going on. And so in addition to that, it's purely at your discretion, and it doesn't put anything at risk for the ordinance on April 18th. One other detail I want to make sure I'm clear on too. So this ordinance approves the sub-area plan. And once that's done, then we will prepare a comp plan amendment, because we need to update your zoning map to show where the sub-area is. And then we need to incorporate the sub-area into the comp plan. So those will be processed as comp plan amendments. And for Benton City, you can do that between June 1st and June 30th each year. And then that requires a 30-day period of notification before any public hearings for that. And so we're on track there. So anyways, just wanted to.
Brandon, can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying regarding the sub-area plan itself, the charrette, but with respect to the standards and the zoning, are they haven't been before the planning commission for hearing, have they?
So the development standards have not, and they'll like the chapter 20.37, that's going to have to go from scratch through planning commission and then 60-day review with Department of Commerce. And so that's where, the way the sub-area plan is structured is, if it's approved by council, it'll establish that area as a sub-area plan. And then the underlying zoning regulations for Benton City will be applicable until those design standards are approved, specific to Title 20.37.
And Brandon, I wanted to ask you about the expedited commerce review.
Yep, and I got that together. So it's pretty simple. It's a 4-page document. You basically describe why you're asking Commerce for expedited review. SCJ has done it before for other municipalities. And this one would be straightforward because they've already reviewed the sub-area plan by HPL. So we could simply submit the development standards and then reference the sub-area plan that they just reviewed, 65, 70 days ago. And it's pretty straightforward process. In fact, I already have the document drafted for you.
And how quick of a turnaround is that?
Well, I think what we would do is request that their review is done in time to sync up with the comprehensive plan adoption process.
Can it sync up with the lifting of the moratorium?
I'm not 100% sure yet, but let me ask about that. And I know that's a big concern. The one thing that you should think about also, Mayor Lehman, is those requirements from Department of or the Archaeological Historic Preservation, Fish and Wildlife, and DOT or WashDOT. You know, those will need to be complete prior to any kind of any project related activity in that area. And that's going to take some, I mean, those are going to be contracted work by consultants to get in there and complete those studies. So the risk of,
But won't that be done by the developer?
well, no, I mean, for like the critical areas and the shrub step, I believe the Benton City is going to have to get involved in that and get it started to establish which areas, you know, need to be protected for open space.
That sounds consistent with what part of Port Kennewick was saying too, like about the noise. I mean, it sounded like getting part of the stuff started or getting a lot of it done was important because you have developers who come in and they get excited, but then they don't actually have the ability to advance. And you're asking them to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars or however much it is. Hopefully it's not that much to understand those pieces. And for sure, without them, a bank won't give them a loan.
Well, I
Yeah,
think.
Councilwoman Funk is correct too. And that's where I was hopeful to have this workshop because I feel like this is a good venue to talk about some of these details. But, you know, in addition to that, like before the city engages a potential developer, I think there's a little bit of, there's some due diligence that needs to be done around infrastructure, water, sewer, roadways. So when a developer approaches Benton City, there's a good understanding of you know what that cost, what that impact is going to be, what the required level of service is going to be, so on and so forth.
Brandon, the problem is that we don't own the land and that's going to be done by DNR. And so sale of that land is out of our hands. And that's one reason I'm concerned if we don't have these design standards in place when we lift the moratorium.
Well,
because they could go ahead next week and say, okay, we're gonna sell this land. And if they come in, you know, the week we lift the moratorium, then, you know, and the design standards aren't in there, then we could be stuck with whatever we get.
Mayor or Brandon, I'm not positive who might best answer this, but if we need to extend the moratorium for a brief period of time, could you let me know?
I don't think we have that option. It's been a year.
no.
Well, moratorium can typically be extended. If there's some reason that this cannot be for some specific reason, then it's different than I'm.
Because we extended it once for another 6 months, but it was my understanding that we had to lift it at the end of the year.
Yeah, my understanding was you can only extend it one time as well. You could run it for 6 months and you could extend it once, but that was it. But
Did it start off as a year?
No, started off with 6 months.
Okay.
Kerr Law spent a lot of time in the beginning telling us all about this, though. There's probably some great, excellent minutes and for sure recordings that comment on this pretty specifically.
Well, I'll go see what I can find out.
Yeah, okay.
Mayor Lehman, just one more point to your questions. One thing to think about is once this sub area plan is approved, then you can start applying, you know, some assumptions around like densities and types of uses, you know, so residential densities, if there's industrial areas, you know, what's the intensity of that? And then I think that's where you can start to, you know, get Alan to think about, okay, you know, what does that mean for extending infrastructure to serve 100 new residents or whatever to that area? And we can start to quantify distribution of water and, sewer capacity and you might have, as far as like roadway, sure, we wouldn't be like designing the roadway, but we might have, the alignment and, so when those developers engage us, that's clear that, what some of those cost requirements are going to be, and then they would engage an engineering firm to detail it out. So anyways. All right, thank you all. I appreciate it.
Okay,
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
all right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Go see your baby.